Welcome to Lady E's Dark Tales. What if your weekend escape turned into an encounter beyond comprehension? A peaceful night by the lake, good company, and the quiet hum of nature, until the silence is shattered by lights in the sky that defy all logic. Tonight we follow Sergeant Marcus Jenkins as his relaxing getaway at Belton Lake takes a terrifying turn. Vanishing time, a missing friend, a cryptic message that suggests the nightmare isn't over. Dim the lights, steady your nerves, and prepare for a journey into the unknown in a story I call The Incident at Belton Lake.
Hey everyone, I've been debating whether to share this story for almost a year now. My therapist thinks it might help with the nightmares if I talk about it and get it out there. So here goes nothing. I'm Marcus Jenkins, a former sergeant with the 1st Cavalry Division at Fort Hood, Texas. Last April, my buddy Derek Williams and I were out at Belton Lake, about 15 minutes from the installation. We'd both just finished a grueling training cycle and had a 72-hour pass, so we decided to get away, do some fishing, drink a few beers, normal stuff to decompress. We'd been at Fort Hood together for about 2 years at that point. Derek was with me throughout my deployment in Iraq, and we'd gotten tight, the kind of friendship you only form when you've trusted someone with your life. We weren't big outdoorsmen or anything, but Belton Lake was close, convenient, and far enough from the installation that we wouldn't run into our chain of command. So we set up at this secluded spot on the north shore of the lake, maybe half a mile from the nearest camping area. It was a weeknight in early spring, so the place was practically deserted. We'd brought a small tent, cooler full of beer, fishing gear, and Derek's portable speaker for some music. Nothing fancy, just 2 soldiers enjoying some downtime. The days went by quick, fishing, swimming, grilling some burgers on a small camp stove. By nightfall, we'd had a few beers each. Nothing crazy, just enough to feel relaxed. We were sitting by our small campfire, looking out at the lake. The moon was almost full, casting this silver path across the water. It was peaceful, one of those perfect moments when you forget about all the military BS for a while. On our last day, we did more fishing, grilling, and drinking. The day went by fast. I remember checking my watch around 11:30 p.m., thinking we should probably turn in soon. That's when Derek nudged my arm and pointed up at the sky. Shadow Watcher in the chat asks, "What exactly did you see?" I bet it was a light. Am I right? Yeah. At first it was just a single light, hovering completely still above the tree line across the lake. It was too bright to be a star, too stationary to be an aircraft. My first thought was maybe it was a drone or helicopter from the installation. We're used to seeing all kinds of aircraft during exercises around Fort Hood. But there was no sound, no rotors, no engines, nothing. Just this light perfectly still, reflecting off the lake. We watched it for maybe 5 minutes, trying to figure out what it could be. Then it started moving. Not the way planes or helicopters move with a clear direction, but these short, jerky movements like it was zigzagging across the sky. Derek grabbed his phone to record it. I did the same. We were both infantry, trained to observe and report, so that instinct kicked in. The light started getting closer, moving across the lake toward our position. As it got nearer, it split into 3 distinct lights, forming a triangle pattern. Then the lights changed color, from white to this intense blue-green that reflected off the water. It was close enough now that we could see it wasn't just lights. There was something solid behind them, a dark mass blocking out the stars behind it. I remember Derek commenting that this wasn't one of ours, wasn't any aircraft he'd ever seen in his 6 years of service. Being infantry, we'd seen pretty much every aircraft in the U.S. arsenal, especially at Fort Hood with all its aviation units. This was something else entirely. The object stopped directly above the lake, maybe 300 yards from shore and 500 feet up. The blue-green lights were pulsing now, getting brighter, then dimmer, in a rhythm that didn't seem random. It was like some kind of code or signal. That's when our phones died simultaneously, just shut off, completely dead. Even though mine had been at 85% battery, the fire seemed to dim too, like something was draining the energy from everything around us. Derek suggested we move back to the car, maybe try to leave, but I wasn't sure that was a good idea. Moving might draw attention to us, but we took a chance and ran anyway. At this point, we were both stone cold sober, adrenaline burning through whatever buzz we'd had earlier. Brave officer asks, "Did you consider reporting it while it was happening?" We did, actually. Derek tried using the radio in his car, but it was dead too, just static. No cell service, no radio. We were completely cut off. I remember the air temperature dropping suddenly. It had been a warm spring night, maybe 70 degrees, but it plummeted to where we could see our breath. The surface of the lake started to, I don't know how else to describe it except to say it looked like it was boiling, but without heat, like the water was being agitated from below. Then a beam of light shot down from the center of the craft, hitting the water. It created this perfect circle of light about 30 feet in diameter. The water within that circle was churning violently, creating this mist that rose up toward the craft. Derek grabbed his rifle from the car. We both had our personal weapons with us, so I did the same, more out of instinct than any rational thought that a 5.56 millimeter round would do anything against whatever this was. We backed up against his car, weapons at the low ready, not pointed at the object, but prepared. Military training kicking in. Establish security, assess the situation, communicate, move. That's when the humming started. Low at first, almost imperceptible, but it quickly grew until it was vibrating through my chest, rattling the windows of the car. It wasn't a sound so much as a physical sensation, like standing too close to a massive speaker. The beam of light widened and something began to rise out of the water. Not a craft, not a being, just this column of water rising up toward the light, defying gravity. It was like the craft was extracting something from the lake. I glanced at Derek and his expression. I'll never forget it. Pure primal fear. This was a guy who'd taken enemy fire without flinching, who'd been through the worst of the worst in Iraq, and he looked absolutely terrified. He raised his rifle, pointing it toward the craft. I hissed at him to stand down, that we didn't know what we were dealing with, that provoking it was the worst possible move. He lowered his weapon, but I could see his finger was still near the trigger. The column of water collapsed suddenly, splashing back into the lake. The beam vanished. For a moment, everything was still. Then the craft started to move again, this time directly toward the shore, directly toward us. I don't remember making a conscious decision to run. 1 second we were standing by the car, the next we were sprinting through the woods, away from the shore. I could feel the blue-green light behind us, casting our shadows long in front of us as we ran. The humming grew louder, filling my head, making it hard to think. I remember my legs getting heavy, like running through deep mud. Derek was a few steps ahead of me, but he was slowing too. Then he stopped, just stopped running, and stood perfectly still. I called his name, grabbed his arm, tried to pull him along, but it was like trying to move a statue. He was rigid, unresponsive, staring straight ahead with this vacant expression. The light was all around us now, this pulsing blue-green that seemed to be coming from everywhere at once. I couldn't see the craft anymore, just the light. My limbs grew heavier, and I felt this overwhelming urge to sleep. I fought it as hard as I could, still trying to get Derek to move, to respond. The last thing I remember is falling to my knees beside him, my vision tunneling down to a pinpoint, the humming so loud it felt like my head would explode. Then nothing. Complete blackness. I woke up alone, face down in the dirt, the sun high in the sky. My watch said 2:17 p.m. I lost over 12 hours. Derek was gone. Our campsite was undisturbed, tent still up, cooler still there, fishing poles leaning against a tree. His car was still parked where we left it, keys in the ignition, but Derek was nowhere to be found. I searched for hours, calling his name until my voice gave out. Finally, I drove back to the installation and reported him missing. I told the MPs exactly what had happened. The lights, the craft, everything. They didn't believe me, of course. They breathalyzed me, drug tested me, and sent me to the hospital for evaluation. The official theory was that we'd gotten drunk. Derek had gone swimming in the lake and drowned. They searched the lake for 3 days, but never found a body. When they checked our phones, all the videos and photos from that night were gone, just gone, like they'd never been taken. My commanding officer suggested that maybe I'd imagined the whole thing, that grief and shock can do strange things to the mind. But I know what I saw. I know it was real. They kept me under observation in the hospital for a week, diagnosed me with PTSD and acute stress reaction, put me on all kinds of medications that made it hard to think clearly. By the time I was released, the investigation into Derek's disappearance had been downgraded. Just another soldier gone missing, probably AWOL or a tragic accident. I tried to keep pushing, to get someone to listen, but no one would. My unit started to distance themselves from me. Guys I'd known for years would go quiet when I entered the room. I heard the whispers that I'd had some kind of breakdown, that maybe I'd done something to Derek myself. 3 months later, I was medically discharged. Not fit for duty due to psychological issues. My military career over, just like that. I moved back to my hometown in Ohio, tried to rebuild my life, started seeing a civilian therapist who at least pretends to believe me, even if I know she doesn't really. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night. 2 weeks ago, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It just said, "I'm still here. They're not what we think. White Sands, July 2025. It was Derek's birthday, July 2025, a few months away. I tried calling the number, but it was disconnected. I've analyzed those 3 short sentences 1,000 times. White Sands, the missile range in New Mexico, a meeting place, a clue, I don't know. But I know I'll be there wherever there is in July, because if there's even a chance Derek is alive, I have to find him. I owe him that much. So that's my story. Believe it, don't believe it. I've gotten used to people thinking I'm crazy. But if you're ever at Belton Lake or any body of water near a military installation and you see lights in the sky that move in ways aircraft shouldn't be able to move, don't stick around to investigate. Don't try to record it. Just get out of there as fast as you can. Well, thanks for hearing me out, everyone. I needed to tell someone who might actually consider that I'm not just some traumatized vet with delusions. If I find anything else, learn anything new, I'll update you all. And if something happens to me, well, at least my story is out there now. You have a good night.
And so, my beloved audience, we have reached the end of this chilling account, though the mystery is far from over. A soldier vanished without a trace, a mind fractured by glimpses of something beyond human understanding, and a cryptic message that raises more questions than answers. What really happened to Derek Williams that night? Was he taken? Or did he go willingly? And what awaits at White Sands in July? If you've ever seen something you can't explain or felt like the truth was just out of reach, share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join me for more tales that blur the line between reality and nightmare. Until next time, sweet screams, my darlings. And remember, some disappearances are not meant to be solved.